She's just a diversity hire who'll wash out in 6 months. Those were Commander Morrison's exact words as 26-year-old Jessica Parker disappeared beneath an F-18's belly with her toolbox. What Morrison didn't know was that in exactly 2 hours and 37 minutes, when every electronic system on the USS Nimitz would simultaneously crash and Chinese submarines would surface within missile range, that same diversity hire would be the only person standing between 5,000 souls and certain death. The South China Sea stretched endlessly under a blood-red sunrise as the USS Nimitz cut through moderate swells at 7:15 local time on October 18, 2024. Deep within the ship's electronic nerve center, Petty Officer First Class Jessica Parker worked alone, her fingers dancing across keyboards in the Network Operations Center. The screens cast an eerie glow across her face as she traced patterns that shouldn't exist, anomalies that made her stomach twist with dread. But what she was discovering would make Commander Morrison's prejudice seem like the least of their problems. Parker had grown up in her father's electronics repair shop in Phoenix, where broken circuit boards whispered their secrets to anyone who knew how to listen. A Stanford scholarship had given her the theory, but those childhood hours with a soldering iron had taught her something more valuable. Electronics had a heartbeat, and right now, the Nimitz's heart was skipping beats in a rhythm that spelled disaster. For 6 days, she'd been tracking what the engineering department dismissed as growing pains. Communication delays that lasted just long enough to be annoying, radar glitches that appeared and vanished like ghosts, power fluctuations that made lights dim throughout the ship. Standard diagnostics showed green across all systems, but Parker's instincts screamed that something was hunting them. And she was right. Someone was systematically killing their ship from the inside. Lieutenant Commander Morrison represented everything Parker had learned to navigate carefully in her 5-year naval career. The 38-year-old operations officer commanded through volume and intimidation rather than understanding, viewing the ship's electronics as magical black boxes that either worked or didn't. His immediate suspicion of Parker's unconventional methods made their relationship toxic, especially since her quiet, methodical style irritated him in ways he couldn't articulate. Morrison's prejudices weren't entirely conscious, but they poisoned every interaction. In his mind, complex electronics required masculine aggression that women supposedly lacked. Parker's patient investigation suggested problems might be subtle, exactly the kind of thinking that challenged his worldview and threatened his authority. What Morrison didn't realize was that his dismissive attitude was about to cost them everything. Lieutenant Sarah Blake served as Morrison's XO and the ship's unofficial peacekeeper between his authoritarian style and the technical personnel who actually kept systems operational. At 32, Blake had earned her position through exceptional submarine warfare performance, understanding both naval politics and technical realities. She recognized Parker's expertise, but found herself caught between supporting excellence and maintaining unit cohesion under Morrison's increasingly difficult leadership. Blake had observed Parker solve problems that senior technicians missed, developing solutions that worked under operational stress. Parker's methods were unconventional, but results spoke louder than procedures. Blake suspected Morrison's hostility stemmed from insecurity rather than professional assessment, but direct confrontation would be career suicide without overwhelming evidence. She was about to get that evidence in the most terrifying way possible. The crisis began at 9:43 local time, when Chief Electronics Technician David Sullivan noticed 3 separate radar systems showing inconsistent target tracking data. The discrepancies were subtle. Range estimates differed by fractions, Bearing calculations varied by degrees. Velocity computations showed minor inconsistencies that fell within tolerance ranges. But Sullivan had 20 years of experience, and he knew subtle inaccuracies preceded catastrophic failures. In naval warfare, fractional errors meant the difference between successful intercept and catastrophic miss. Parker was deep in protocol analysis when Sullivan burst into the Network Operations Center with news that transformed her investigation from routine maintenance to life-or-death crisis management. "Parker, we've got radar problems spreading across multiple systems, and they're accelerating. Whatever you've been tracking might be connected to our fire control degradation." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Sullivan's data and cross-referencing it with her own analysis. The correlation patterns that emerged confirmed her worst fears and validated every sleepless hour she'd spent chasing digital ghosts. The same anomalies affecting communications were systematically degrading the precision systems that guided defensive weapons. This wasn't system failure. This was war. "Sullivan, this isn't random drift," Parker said, her voice carrying controlled urgency as she highlighted correlation patterns across multiple screens. "Someone has injected malware into our network infrastructure. It's designed to degrade performance gradually rather than triggering obvious failures that would prompt investigation." Sullivan studied the displays with growing alarm, his experienced eye recognizing systematic attack rather than accidental malfunction. "How long has this been running? And who the hell has the capability to penetrate our security?" Parker checked her timestamps, cold dread settling in her stomach as she realized the scope of the assault. "Based on degradation curves, at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. The attack mimics normal system aging, but the mathematical patterns are too precise to be natural." But the real shock was still coming. Sullivan absorbed the implications with professional calm, but his expression showed deep concern about their tactical situation. "If someone's been systematically degrading our combat systems for weeks, they're planning to exploit our vulnerabilities during a specific operational window." Parker pulled up additional analysis showing the attack's progression, revealing sophisticated capability destruction that demonstrated intimate knowledge of the ship's operations. The malware is programmed to accelerate during high-stress operations when systems operate at maximum capacity. Whoever planned this wanted our systems to fail exactly when we needed them most. That's when Morrison arrived, summoned by Sullivan's urgent reports of radar malfunctions. His expression showed frustrated irritation with complex problems that challenged his leadership style and exposed his limited understanding of the systems he managed. "What's the situation, Sullivan?" Morrison demanded, his voice carrying impatience for immediate answers to complicated questions. "Are our radars working or not?" "I need a clear assessment for Admiral Torres without technical complications." Sullivan attempted to provide direct assessment while ensuring Parker's discoveries weren't dismissed due to complexity. "Sir, Petty Officer Parker has discovered evidence of systematic electronic warfare attack against our ship's systems. The radar accuracy problems appear to be symptoms of broader network compromise affecting multiple critical systems." Morrison's skepticism was immediate, reflexive, and dismissive. "Network compromise? Parker, are you telling me someone hacked the most secure electronics on a United States Navy supercarrier? Do you understand how ridiculous that sounds?" What happened next would determine whether 5,000 people lived or died. Parker had anticipated this reaction and prepared evidence that would be difficult to dismiss. "Sir, the attack exploits vulnerabilities in interface protocols between different system manufacturers. Our ship integrates electronics from dozens of contractors, and the malware targets translation software that allows disparate systems to communicate." Morrison glanced at Parker's screens without serious attempt to understand the technical details, his body language making clear he'd decided her assessment was wrong before examining evidence. "This looks like normal monitoring data. I see numbers and graphs, but nothing proving malicious attack rather than maintenance issues we can handle through standard procedures." Blake stepped forward to examine Parker's analysis more carefully, her submarine warfare experience having taught her to recognize subtle patterns indicating hostile action. "Parker, can you show us specific indicators that distinguish intentional attack from natural system malfunction?" Parker opened multiple windows displaying time series analysis revealing mathematical patterns no natural system would produce. "Ma'am, natural aging follows predictable exponential decay based on component wear. This data shows linear degradation with periodic resets following precise mathematical timing. That's proof of programmed manipulation rather than organic aging." Blake studied the displays with growing concern, recognizing significance even without deep technical expertise. "What's the projected timeline for complete system failure if this continues?" The answer would terrify everyone in the room. Parker's calculations painted a picture of systematic capability destruction that would leave them defenseless. Based on current degradation rates, radar accuracy drops below combat effectiveness in 3 hours and 47 minutes. Communication systems fail completely within 5 hours and 23 minutes. Fire control becomes unreliable within 6 hours and 15 minutes. Morrison interrupted before Parker could complete her assessment. "This is theoretical speculation based on computer models. Our systems test functional, our crew maintains readiness, and we're conducting normal operations. I won't create panic based on one technician's interpretation of monitoring data." That's when everything changed forever. The conversation was interrupted at 10:07 local time by urgent communication from the bridge reporting multiple sonar contacts approaching from 3 directions simultaneously. Electronic signatures suggested Chinese submarine forces had somehow approached within striking distance without detection by the sensor network protecting American naval operations. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Someone had planned this attack to exploit the exact vulnerabilities Parker had discovered. Admiral Rebecca Torres immediately ordered defensive measures, including emergency launch of anti-submarine warfare aircraft and rapid deployment of protective destroyer escorts. But as the Nimitz attempted to coordinate defensive operations, the electronic attack Parker had been tracking began manifesting as operational failures, threatening the ship's ability to defend itself. Communication between the carrier and escorts became unreliable as encrypted channels experienced systematic data corruption, making coordinated movement nearly impossible. Radar systems provided conflicting information about submarine positions, making it extremely difficult to direct anti-submarine weapons accurately. Fire control computers calculated intercept solutions that varied significantly from previous calculations, suggesting mathematical algorithms controlling defensive weapons had been compromised. Parker realized with crystalline clarity that the electronic attack was designed to activate during combat operations, when system failures would have maximum tactical impact and minimum opportunity for correction. "Commander Morrison, the malware triggers enhanced effects during high-stress operations," Parker said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Whoever planned this wanted our systems to fail when we needed them most." Morrison's response reflected deep frustration with problems that couldn't be solved through traditional authority. "Parker, I don't have time for conspiracy theories. Our systems are malfunctioning, and I need solutions that restore functionality, not academic speculation." Blake recognized that Parker's analysis might provide the only path to restoring combat effectiveness before approaching submarines' achieved firing position. "Parker, assuming your assessment is accurate, can you neutralize the attack and restore full operational capability?" What Parker said next would either save them all or doom them to destruction. Parker had been developing countermeasures while tracking the attack's progression, but implementing them required administrative access to critical systems normally locked during combat operations. "Ma'am, I can eliminate the malware and restore functionality, but I need emergency authorization to modify core system software while keeping everything operational. The repair requires rewriting interface protocols in real time without shutting down critical systems." Morrison exploded at the suggestion of allowing junior personnel to modify critical combat systems during active threat engagement. "Absolutely not! You want me to give a petty officer administrative access to our most sensitive electronics during a submarine attack? That's exactly the kind of reckless decision that gets ships sunk and sailors killed." Admiral Torres' voice crackled over the communication system, with an update that crystallized everyone's priorities. "All stations, sonar contact classification confirmed as hostile submarines in coordinated attack formation. Estimated time to optimal weapon release window is 38 minutes. I need all defensive systems operating at maximum effectiveness immediately." Blake looked directly at Morrison and made a command decision that would define both their careers. "Sir, respectfully requesting immediate authorization for Parker's countermeasures. Our current degradation trajectory makes successful defense increasingly unlikely, and her assessment represents our best chance for restoring combat capability before submarines achieve firing position." Morrison found himself caught between institutional caution, demanding established security protocols, and operational necessity requiring unprecedented risks to prevent catastrophic defeat. The approaching submarines were close enough to launch advanced torpedoes and anti-ship missiles that could cripple or destroy the Nimitz before defensive systems could respond effectively. The next 60 seconds would determine the fate of 5,000 souls. "Parker, if you're wrong about this cyber attack, or if your countermeasures make our problems worse, this ship and everyone on it pays the ultimate price," Morrison said through gritted teeth. "You have 35 minutes to prove your theory and fix whatever's broken." Parker was already accessing system administration interfaces as Morrison finished speaking, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency across multiple keyboards while orchestrating the most complex electronic repair operation of her career. The malware had embedded itself throughout the ship's network infrastructure like a sophisticated virus, requiring surgical precision to remove infected code without damaging legitimate systems that kept the ship operational. "Blake, I need someone monitoring the tactical situation continuously while I work," Parker called out as lines of code scrolled across her screens in cascading green patterns. "If submarines change position, launch weapons, or alter their attack pattern while I'm neutralizing the malware, I need immediate notification so I can adjust procedures accordingly." Blake positioned herself at the tactical display console, where she could simultaneously track approaching threats and monitor Parker's progress. "Parker, latest sonar data indicates 3 submarines have achieved preliminary firing position. Current estimates show time to probable weapon launch at 26 minutes and decreasing." What Parker discovered next would change naval warfare forever. Her detailed analysis of the malware revealed sophisticated programming demonstrating intimate knowledge of naval combat systems, clearly designed by experts who understood American defensive capabilities better than most American technicians. The attack code wasn't designed for random destruction, but represented carefully orchestrated degradation intended to maximize confusion and minimize defensive effectiveness during precisely the kind of coordinated engagement they now faced. "This malware was written by people who understand our systems better than most of our own technicians," Parker reported, as she began implementing complex countermeasures requiring simultaneous modification of multiple systems. The code specifically targets known vulnerabilities in interface protocols between radar, communication, and fire control systems. Someone provided them with detailed technical specifications that should have been classified above top secret. Morrison absorbed the implications with growing anger and concern about security breaches that had made such an attack possible. Are you suggesting someone with access to highly classified information deliberately provided targeting data, enabling this attack against American naval forces? Parker continued working while responding, her attention divided between complex repair procedures and keeping her superiors informed about her discoveries. Sir, this level of detailed system knowledge requires either extensive reverse engineering over many months or direct access to manufacturer specifications normally restricted to personnel with specialized security clearances. The attack was planned by people who knew exactly how to damage our combat effectiveness without triggering obvious alarms. Blake provided regular tactical updates as Parker's countermeasures began taking effect and restoring functionality to compromised systems. Parker, I'm seeing measurable improvement in radar coherence and communication clarity. Whatever repair procedures you're implementing are definitely working. But the submarines were closing faster than repairs could be completed. Parker's restoration procedures required isolating and replacing compromised software modules while maintaining system continuity, a delicate process that normally required hours of careful preparation but had to be completed in minutes during active threat engagement. Each corrected system restored incremental capability to the ship's defensive posture, but submarines were approaching optimal weapon release range faster than repairs could be completed using conventional methods. Morrison, I can restore most functionality to acceptable levels, but fire control systems need additional time for complete calibration and testing, Parker reported as her countdown timer showed 16 minutes remaining until probable weapon launch. I can give you radar and communications immediately, but weapons accuracy will remain somewhat degraded for another 10 minutes. Morrison made rapid calculations about defensive timelines and available tactical options, weighing imperfect solutions against certainty of catastrophic failure if no action was taken. How significantly degraded are the weapon systems? Can we engage targets effectively with current capability, or do we need to wait for complete restoration? Parker's assessment was brutally honest about their tactical situation and limitations they would face during defensive engagement. Sir, current fire control accuracy is approximately 68% of normal effectiveness. Against stationary targets that might be acceptable. Against maneuvering submarines launching high-speed weapons, it significantly reduces our intercept probability and could result in weapons missing their targets. That's when Admiral Torres delivered news that compressed their timeline even further. All stations, sonar contacts have increased speed and changed formation to optimal attack configuration. Estimated time to weapon launch is now 13 minutes. Request immediate status update on defensive systems restoration. Blake grabbed the communication handset to respond, while Parker continued her increasingly frantic repair efforts. Admiral, Petty Officer Parker has identified and is actively neutralizing a sophisticated cyber attack that was systematically degrading our combat systems. Radar and communications are approaching full effectiveness. Fire control systems require an additional 6 minutes for complete restoration. Torres' response reflected the brutal mathematics of naval combat, where timing often determined the difference between survival and destruction. We may not have 6 minutes before they launch. Continue repairs and prepare for immediate defensive engagement with whatever capability becomes available. Parker realized her technical expertise was about to be tested under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Combat operations where system failures could result in successful enemy attack against the ship and crew she'd sworn to protect. The moment of truth had arrived. Morrison, I can accelerate fire control restoration by bypassing certain safety protocols. "But that creates some risk of system instability under combat stress," Parker said, her voice steady despite the weight of 5,000 lives resting on her decision. Morrison faced the classic military leadership dilemma of choosing between known risks and unknown consequences, while lives hung in the balance. "Parker, what's your professional assessment of the probability that bypassed safety protocols will cause critical system failure during defensive engagement?" Parker's answer reflected both her technical expertise and understanding of the life-and-death stakes involved. "Sir, under normal operating conditions, I would estimate 12% probability of system instability. Under combat stress with rapid system cycling and maximum power demands, that increases to roughly 28%. However, our current degraded systems have only 43% effectiveness, so even with increased instability risk, bypassed protocols provide significantly better combat capability." Blake monitored the tactical display showing submarine positions approaching optimal firing geometry, while Parker implemented accelerated repair procedures, pushing system restoration beyond normal safety parameters. "Parker, submarines are now at 11 minutes from optimal weapon release window. How much additional time do you absolutely need for basic defensive capability?" Parker's fingers moved frantically across keyboards as she forced system restoration procedures to operate faster than designed parameters safely allowed. 4 more minutes for basic fire control functionality sufficient for point defense operations. Full effectiveness would require 8 minutes, but basic capability should allow successful engagement of incoming weapons." Morrison watched Parker's countdown timer while calculating the intersection of technical restoration and tactical necessity that would determine their survival. "Admiral Torres, this is Morrison. Fire control systems will be restored to basic operational status in 4 minutes, requesting permission to begin defensive engagement as soon as minimum capability is achieved." Torres's response carried the authority of someone understanding that combat operations often required accepting imperfect solutions under extreme time pressure. "Morrison, you have authorization to engage hostile contacts as soon as systems reach minimum effectiveness. We cannot allow these submarines to achieve optimal firing position while our defenses remain compromised." The final countdown had begun. Parker's countermeasures reached critical restoration phase as she began reactivating fire control computer functionality that had been systematically degraded by weeks of sophisticated cyber attack. Each corrected algorithm restored incremental weapons accuracy, but the restoration process required delicate coordination between multiple subsystems that normally operated independently and had never been repaired simultaneously under combat conditions. "Morrison, basic fire control functionality restored to acceptable levels," Parker announced as her status displays turned green across all primary systems for the first time in weeks. Weapons accuracy approximately 76% of full effectiveness, and continuing to improve as calibration algorithms complete their cycles. Morrison immediately relayed the restoration news to Admiral Torres, while Blake monitored tactical displays showing submarine positions approaching the critical engagement range, where defensive success became increasingly difficult. "Admiral, basic fire control systems are operational and improving, requesting immediate permission to commence defensive engagement against hostile contacts." Torres's authorization came without hesitation. "Morrison, you are cleared to engage all hostile contacts. Commence defensive operations immediately and maintain continuous status updates on system performance." What happened next would become naval legend. The USS Nimitz's defensive engagement began at 10:49 local time, as Parker's hastily repaired systems guided advanced weapons toward submarine targets that had penetrated closer to an American carrier than any hostile force in decades. The restored radar systems provided targeting data that allowed defensive weapons to engage at near maximum effective range, while repaired communication systems coordinated tactical movement between the carrier and its escort vessels in synchronized defensive operations. Parker monitored system performance throughout the engagement, watching carefully for signs of malware resurgence or system instability caused by her emergency repair procedures that had bypassed normal safety protocols. The weapon systems performed better than expected throughout the defensive engagement, with accuracy levels proving her countermeasures had successfully eliminated the cyber attack without creating new vulnerabilities. The submarine threat was completely neutralized within 19 minutes of the beginning of defensive operations, with all hostile contacts either destroyed by direct hits or forced to withdraw beyond effective weapon range by the intensity of defensive fire. Parker's restored systems had performed at levels exceeding original design specifications throughout the engagement, proving her emergency repair procedures had not only eliminated the malware, but actually optimized system performance beyond previous operational capabilities. But the story wasn't over yet. Morrison found Parker in the Network Operations Center immediately after successful completion of defensive operations, her workstation still displaying the complex code sequences and diagnostic data she'd used to save the ship and crew from cyber attack that could have proven catastrophic. Parker, your work today was nothing short of extraordinary. You identified a sophisticated threat that our most advanced monitoring systems completely missed, developed effective countermeasures under extreme time pressure, and restored combat capability that enabled successful defense against coordinated submarine attack. Parker's response reflected her focus on systemic improvement rather than personal recognition. Sir, this attack succeeded initially because our network architecture wasn't specifically designed to detect sophisticated malware targeting interface protocols between different manufacturers' systems. We need to develop comprehensive monitoring capabilities that can identify this type of attack before it degrades our combat effectiveness to dangerous levels. Blake joined the conversation with professional assessment of Parker's performance and its broader implications for naval cybersecurity throughout the fleet. Parker, your countermeasures not only solved our immediate tactical problem, but revealed critical vulnerabilities potentially affecting every ship in the Navy. This incident proves cyber attack has become a primary threat to naval operations, requiring the same level of attention and resources we devote to traditional weapons systems. Admiral Torres visited the Network Operations Center personally to commend Parker's performance and ensure her discoveries were properly documented for immediate distribution throughout the fleet. Petty Officer Parker, your technical expertise and decisive action under extreme pressure prevented what could have been a catastrophic defeat for American naval forces in this region. You didn't just save this ship and its crew. You identified a completely new category of threat that our entire fleet must prepare to counter. The recognition that followed changed everything for everyone involved. Parker was immediately promoted to Chief Petty Officer and received assignment to the Navy's newly established Cyber Defense Command as a senior analyst responsible for developing detection and countermeasure systems for the type of sophisticated attack she had discovered and successfully defeated. Her detailed analysis of interface protocol vulnerabilities led to comprehensive security upgrades across the entire naval fleet and significantly influenced cyber defense strategies for all military branches. Morrison received promotion to commander and assignment as executive officer aboard a newly commissioned destroyer, bringing with him hard-earned respect for technical expertise, regardless of its source, and strong commitment to supporting innovative solutions to complex operational problems. His experience with Parker during the submarine crisis taught him that effective leadership required recognizing and utilizing talent wherever it existed within his command structure, regardless of rank, gender, or conventional expectations. Blake was promoted to lieutenant commander and became the Navy's first dedicated cyber operations officer, responsible for integrating cyber defense capabilities with traditional naval warfare operations throughout the Pacific Fleet. Her crucial role in supporting Parker's countermeasures during the submarine crisis established her reputation as a leader who could effectively bridge the gap between technical specialists and operational commanders. The sophisticated cyber attack that Parker defeated became known throughout military circles as the Nimitz incident, and fundamentally changed how all armed forces approached network security and cyber warfare defense operations. Her innovative countermeasure techniques were immediately adopted as standard procedures for protecting military networks against sophisticated state-sponsored attacks, and her diagnostic methods became required training for electronic warfare specialists throughout the Department of Defense. Years later, when military historians studied the incident, they would identify it as the moment when cyber warfare evolved from theoretical threat to operational reality, and when the American military learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with guns and missiles, but with keyboards and code, by people who others never expected to save them. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you encountered situations where expertise was dismissed because of assumptions about background or credentials? Or witnessed how innovation can solve problems that seemed impossible using standard approaches? Let us know your experiences, and don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you.